We uncovered the forbidden training secret Neymar used to make defenders useless. One specific drill perfected in Brazil is now banned in Europe. Stay until the end to learn the exact move coaches are terrified of him revealing. The roar of packed stadiums came long before the boy himself understood what destiny sounded like. And before Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. became a name shouted across continents, he was already carrying the quiet weight of expectation inside narrow Brazilian streets, where football was not a pastime, but a form of survival. Long before global broadcasts froze on his stepovers and defenders collapsed under his feints, there was a child balancing a ball on cracked concrete, learning control not as a skill, but as a necessity, because control meant opportunity, and opportunity meant escape. His father, Neymar Santos Sr., understood this language intimately, having walked close enough to professional football to recognize promise when it announced itself early. What he saw in his son was not just talent, but urgency, the kind that demanded protection, direction, and relentless discipline, because raw brilliance left unattended in Brazil often vanished just as quickly as it appeared. Before the world learned to measure Neymar by goals and trophies, it learned him through movement. There was something disarming in the way he dribbled. Not reckless, but playful, not arrogant, but expressive, as if the ball was an extension of thought rather than equipment. This was the influence of watching Ronaldinho Gaucho late into the night, pausing and rewinding clips until imitation blurred into invention. Neymar did not merely copy. He absorbed rhythm, misdirection, and joy, and then reshaped them through his own instincts. By the time he entered Santos Futebol Clube's youth system, it was already clear that traditional progression would not contain him. His development accelerated unnaturally, pushed forward by schedules that left little room for childhood, and even less for error. The moment Europe first knocked did not arrive with celebration, but with a decision heavy enough to alter history. When Real Madrid extended an invitation for a teenage Neymar to relocate to Spain, the temptation was enormous, but so was the risk of losing identity. Neymar stayed. That choice, rooted in family values rather than ambition alone, delayed global superstardom but strengthened something quieter and more enduring. Staying in Brazil meant refinement without displacement, fame without erasure. It also meant financial responsibility arriving too early, as the teenager's earnings became a lifeline for his family. Buying a home near the Santos Stadium was not a luxury. It was strategy, placing the future as close as possible to its proving ground. Professional football did not test Neymar's patience. His debut for Santos arrived before adulthood had finished introducing itself, and goals followed almost immediately. Yet what captivated crowds was not the scoring itself, but how it was done. Defenders turned inside out, angles bent to his will, and the ball seemingly glued to his foot through chaos. Sponsors recognized spectacle before trophies did, and Nike's long-term commitment signaled that this was not a local phenomenon, but a global asset in the making. With each viral clip spreading through the early ecosystem of YouTube, Neymar's reputation leaped borders faster than contracts ever could. Brazilian football history has little tolerance for waiting, and Neymar's omission from the 2010 World Cup squad, despite his domestic dominance, created an early lesson in restraint. That disappointment sharpened him rather than discouraged him. And when his national team debut finally arrived, it lasted less than half an hour before he scored. From that moment forward, he belonged to the Seleção, not as a prospect, but as a focal point. Offers from European clubs intensified, yet Neymar resisted, choosing instead to elevate Santos to continental relevance. Leading the club to Copa Libertadores glory for the first time since the Pelé era did more than win silverware. It anchored Neymar's name into South American football mythology. Global recognition reached an unavoidable climax when an audacious solo goal against Flamengo earned the FIFA Puskás Award, turning admiration into inevitability. He was no longer a future export. He was a present phenomenon. Ballon d'Or rankings began to whisper his name alongside players whose careers had already reshaped the sport. When Barcelona finally secured his signature, it was not merely a transfer, but a coronation delayed long enough to feel earned. Yet arrival at the Camp Nou did not bring immediate dominance. Playing alongside Lionel Andrés Messi, Andrés Iniesta Lujan, and Carles Puyol demanded humility, and Neymar's first season unfolded with hesitation rather than blast. 15 goals masks internal struggle, the weight of expectation pressing against self-belief. But beneath the surface, something more alarming was forming. Chemistry grew quietly, and when the world turned its attention to Brazil's hosting of the World Cup, Neymar returned home carrying not just hope, but responsibility. The 2014 World Cup began with promise and ended in devastation. Neymar's goals propelled Brazil forward until a single reckless challenge shattered vertebrae and dreams simultaneously. Watching the semi-final collapse from the sidelines as Germany dismantled a Neymarless Brazil did more than scar a tournament. It marked the first moment when fragility entered the narrative. Greatness, it seemed, would not arrive without cost. Back in Spain, recovery met opportunity. Under Luis Enrique Martinez Garcia, Barcelona unlocked a front line that redefined attacking football. Neymar, Messi, and Luis Suarez Diaz combined instinct, intelligence, and ruthlessness into something football had not seen before. The 2014-2015 season unfolded like controlled chaos, Neymar tearing through defenses with relentless efficiency. Goals arrived in clusters, performances peaked when stakes were highest, and by the time Barcelona completed a historic treble, Neymar's fingerprints were everywhere. 49 goals, decisive Champions League moments, and global acclaim followed, yet individual recognition remained elusive, overshadowed by Messi's brilliance. That shadow lingered longer than expected. When Messi's injury briefly removed the barrier, Neymar's response was breathtaking. Performances that convinced many he was the best player on the planet in that window. But shadows return, and as trophies accumulated, personal ambition wrestled with loyalty. Olympic gold with Brazil in 2016 provided national redemption. Neymar converting the decisive penalty against Germany and releasing years of expectation in a single strike. Yet even triumph carried exhaustion, and injuries began creeping back into the margins of his seasons. The decision to leave Barcelona was seismic. Paris Saint-Germain's world record investment was framed as liberation, a chance to lead rather than follow. Neymar arrived in France defiant and dominant, scoring, assisting, and asserting relevance beyond Spain. The narrative briefly shifted toward validation, until injuries struck again, cruelly timed fractures halting momentum just as Champions League ambitions sharpened. His World Cup in Russia became remembered less for goals than for exaggerated reactions. A public misunderstanding of accumulated pain rather than theatrical intent. Seasons blurred into cycles of brilliance interrupted by physical breakdown. Moments of genius resurface in European nights, most notably guiding Paris Saint-Germain to their first Champions League final, only for the ultimate prize to slip away again. Individual accolades remain suspended in hypotheticals. Ballon d'Or conversations, silenced by cancellations and absences. When Lionel Messi joined Paris, the irony was unmistakable. Neymar had fled a shadow only to find another, this time compounded by the rise of Kylian Mbappé Latin. Injuries multiplied, controversies distracted, and faith eroded. By the time Saudi Arabia beckoned, ambition had softened into acceptance. The move to Al Hilal signaled a shift not toward legacy, but security. Brief flashes of contribution preceded catastrophe, a torn anterior cruciate ligament collapsing any remaining illusion of resurgence. Records still fell. Neymar surpassed Pelé as Brazil's all-time leading scorer, a statistical immortality achieved amid physical ruin. But minutes on the pitch dwindled, value questioned, and his Saudi chapter ended more as cautionary tale than renaissance. Returning to Santos closed the circle quietly, not as a conquering hero, but as a familiar figure seeking peace with the game that once bent entirely to his will. At 33, Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. stands as a contradiction football may never fully reconcile. He was neither unfulfilled nor complete, neither wasted nor maximized. He reshaped dribbling, influenced generations, and reminded the sport that beauty still mattered. Titles, injuries, choices, and timing conspired to prevent a single definitive crown, but legacy does not always answer to trophies. Sometimes it lives in memory, in movement, and in the unmistakable truth that for a fleeting stretch of time, football belonged to him. Tell me which version of Neymar you think was truly unstoppable. Let me know in the comments which club he should have never left. Follow for the next football mystery we are exposing. Drop your take on his greatest ever goal below.